Hello, this is AP Human Geography and part two. And let me remind you that you may want to do this on a computer, not on a phone, because I'm going to show you some stuff like big maps and stuff that you don't want to squint too much. Okay, so if you're on your phone, turn it off and get on your laptop. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so basically, we're talking about collecting geographic data and how to use it. Okay. And some of this is pretty interesting. Okay. Um, Geographic data. Now, how is data? You can just make a brief list real quick. How is geo data gathered? Okay. Well, there's what's called field work, and it's when people actually show up to the scene and observe it, take notes, things like that. Okay, think of a geologist going somewhere to look for oil and things like that. I mean, that's just one thing. Okay, or going to a city to measure, the vibe of the place before they move a company to a city. Okay, so actually going there in person. Then you've got the census. Okay. Now, some of you don't know what the census is. Write this down. The census is something that the United States government does every 10 years. And they go to every person in the country, including, soldiers stationed off base. Okay, like in other countries too. And they want you to fill out a questionnaire, and they ask you what's called demographic data. Now, demographic isn't a word I taught in this unit, but that is a word you need to understand in this course. Demos means people. Think like democracy. Okay, demographic is like your age, like how old you are, your race, your religion, your income, and then your location. Now, why does the government need to know this? Well, they need to know who lives where. Like, did California lose population? Did Wyoming gain population? They need to know that. So they know how many representatives each state gets. They need to know how much money to send to each state. Okay, more populous states need more money. And another thing, and how do you use this data? Well, young people tend to vote Democrat, older people tend to not vote Democrat as much. And because of all the census data of the last several years, we know that 7 million Gen Zers are going to be old enough to vote, more than the 2020 election. So what do you do with that information? Well, it just depends on I don't know what you do with that. But you can make decisions based on that data. Okay? So to send money, to how much highway, how much traffic did we need to prepare for? The census tells us things like that. If you have a bunch of young kids, you need to know that you need to build more schools. If you have a bunch of 60-year-olds, then you know that within the next 10 years, you are going to need more hospitals. That's using geographic data. All right. And then there are geospatial technologies. Okay. And there are these red ones. You may know some of them, but you need to be familiar with all three. Okay, so you've got GIS, and you need to know this one. I tend to think of it as, you could just write this down, GIS, layers of information. So when you get on a website and you see different layers, like I always think of Google Maps, where you can have a street layer, you can have like where the Jack in the Boxes are, where the Starbucks are. And then if you're a geologist, you can have like water sources or things like that. If you are trying to run a business, you may want to know where the traffic is. If you are going to open up a McDonald's, then you want to know what is the income of everybody, what is the traffic, and how many other McDonald's are in the area. You would use GIS to determine all of that. So I like to think of GIS, Geographical Information Systems, as layers. Okay, you should have this written down. Okay, so if I were going to look at a map, a crime map, crime is a layer. And then streets would be a different layer. City limits would be a different layer. Okay, so that would be an example of GIS. Here's another GIS. Those are all layers, so that's GIS. Okay, if you're into running or bicycling, you want to know what elevation changes there are. We don't have a lot in our area, but elevation makes a difference. Here's a GIS. This is a COVID map. This is actually, this is from 2023, so this is, I think, it's pretty recent. Or maybe this is just totals. Anyway, but so COVID cases are a layer. Okay, political boundaries are another layer. So that's GIS, very important stuff. And then there's GPS. I'm sure you're all familiar with GPS, so I don't want to get into it too much, but GPS is good for absolute location, your latitude and longitude. It's good for your relative location too, because you can look to see what's nearby. It's good for navigation. Okay. So if you get on Waze or even Google Maps, you can get traffic reports, stuff like that. You can find out where the closest Chick-fil-A is. Okay. All right, that's it. GPS. So if you wanted to know, and actually, Tinder uses GPS. I'm not totally familiar with that, but it's a dating app and it can give you directions wherever you want to go, tell you how close by other people are. Okay, like matches. I'm not recommending it. I'm just telling you GPS. If you're looking for restaurants nearby. So here are some GPS facts. I don't know if you need to write this down, but it was invented by the military and it came in very handy. It still comes in very handy. If you're out in the middle of the desert and there are no landmarks, then you need to find your way around. GPS is pretty essential, especially if you're in a country that you personally are not familiar with. It does use 4 satellites. And it's good for navigation and geolocation. Okay, here's a pizza search I did on Yelp. You might, anyway, you may recognize the streets, you may not. Okay, so that would be GPS. And also, and I've seen this, and you need to be familiar with this, remote sensing. If a satellite takes a photograph or scans the surface of the Earth, that's remote sensing. Weather balloons, airplanes, even helicopters taking pictures of the surface or looking at the weather, that's remote sensing. Think of remote as just far away, from far away. Okay. So here's an example of remote sensing. If you're trying to scan for tornado damage, then you can tell where the tornado hit. And then you can go there and bring the aid to where the tornado hit. Without remote sensing, it would be a little bit harder to do. Okay, and you can look at the damage of the tornado or whatever disaster happened. Hurricane. Another example would be like spying on other countries. This is a North Korean prison camp. So we can put our satellites on there to see what's going on. We can keep an eye out for weapons and stuff. All of that's happening in the Ukraine war. Satellites. Okay, now I will pause the video for you so you don't need to rush. But when I give you multiple choice, I don't expect you to get them all right, but I do expect you to get some of them right. Okay, and if you score too poorly on this, then I'm going to have you redo it. Now, I think I just ruined this one, but that's okay. The statement above refers to which of the following? The answer is C. That's GPS. That's GPS. All right, I got plenty more, so it's not a big deal. All right. All right, that's the same question. Dang it, I'm ruining it. I'm just keep ruining things. Okay. All right, so the GPS is good for the absolute location on the surface of the Earth. Okay. All right, so now remember, geographic information helps people to make decisions. All right, here we go. Do this question. All right, this one seems to be more of like from the last unit, less about GIS, but now you know what GIS is, so it helps. The answer is, there, it goes back to like map projections and stuff like that. I had trouble with this question. All right, try this one. A political polling company, like a Democrat or a Republican polling company, wants to use census data to collect information on voters in a city by neighborhood. Based on the types of information collected in the survey form, which of the following could be mapped using census data? Okay, look at your notes. The answer is right. Remember, the census asks you where you are, how old you are. All right, moving right along. Spatial concepts. Actually, I'm going to show you a video real quick.
Now, I have the good fortune to live within a short drive of no less than 5 Chick-fil-A's. And I gotta be honest, I don't mind. And normally I wouldn't ask questions about my good fortune. I'd just pound chicken sandwiches until my breathing became obstructed. But hey, y'all, this is AP Human Geography, and that means I do want to ask the question, and I know you do too. Why are there so many Chick-fil-A's in such a small space? And that question is answerable when we consider the power of geographic data and the kinds of decisions people make based on that data. So if you're ready to get them brain cows milked combo number 1 style, well, let's get to it. So in the last video, we talked all about where geographic data comes from and who gathers it. And we talked about field observations and media reports and GPS and GIS and on and on and on. But I bet you were tempted to believe that geographers just gather all that data for funsies. Yeah, I was just doing some light field observations and I counted 9,347 automobiles at that intersection. Wow, you really are the kind of geographer that dreams are made of. What are you gonna do with all that data? Nothing? Just having fun. No, geographers do not spend all their time gathering spatial data so they can have lively party talk. Geographers gather all that data because data drives decision making. Let me say that again. Data drives decision making. Do not forget that. Get it tattooed on your forehead if you must, but that's a huge concept here in Unit 1. Oh, by the way, if you want guided notes to follow along with this video so you can get all this content firmly planted in your brain folds, then click the link in the description. Anyway, in order to understand what that means and why there are so many Chick-fil-A's near my house, we're going to look at who uses all this data and what kinds of decisions decisions they make with it. Now, I know you're tempted to think that geospatial and geographical data has no relevance to your life. You might say you're a geographical data hater. Sorry. But I'm here to tell you that
Just a reminder, get off your phone, watch the video. This is important.
yes, even people like you use geographical data to make decisions. So first of all, people use geographical data to make decisions about recreation. So maybe your family is planning an epic trip to Alexandria, Indiana to see the world's largest ball of paint. Obviously, everyone should see that before they die. Anyway, your family is going to use geographical data to get there by plugging it into your GPS system. And then before you leave, you're going to look up the closest hotels and book one as close as possible because trust me, you want to be as close as possible to this wonder of modern boredom. And just to be clear, this video is not sponsored by the world's largest ball of paint. But second of all, people use geographical data when they want to move or relocate. And maybe your mom or your dad gets a job in another city and so they get on Zillow to find a house. And then they use other geographical data about the quality of the school districts for you. So this school has great ratings, this one's kind of a turd, we're gonna move here. Okay, third, and maybe a little too close to home, people can use geographical data to locate other people. Are your parents tracking your phone? Like, do they know where you are at all times? Now, I'm not gonna say whether that's right or wrong, but that data does drive your parents' decision-making process. Like maybe you're a Swiftie and you want to go see Tay-Tay tear it up downtown. But without any ability to track your phone, your parents have no idea whether you're in the arena with T-Swizzle or just went to the local drug dealer's house. And so maybe with that uncertainty, they say no. Also, side note, kids, don't do drugs. But if they can track your phone, then maybe they just might be comfortable enough to send you down there. And then, well, baby, it's time to party like it's 1989. But it's not only people like us who use data to make decisions. Big Daddy government does just as well. And this is important to remember. The government uses geographical data to make decisions at all scales, from national to regional to local. And one major way geographic data drives governmental decision-making is through its use of the census. Now, if you live here in the United States, the federal government conducts a census every 10 years. And basically that just means that they send out government workers to find out who everyone is, like where everyone lives, what kind of money they make, etc. And the results can have big impacts on the kinds of policies that get passed or where government money gets spent. For example, census data tells the government that more Americans are moving to the southern states than anywhere else, and that can have significant effects. First, it can affect how all those sweet government funds are allocated. More people here, more money. Less people here, less money. And second, it can affect the balance of political power in the federal government. Now, in case you don't know, our Congress, whose job it is to make laws, has two houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. And for now, you don't have to worry about the Senate because it's the House that's affected by census data. There are 435 representatives in the House, but they're not equally distributed between the states. Highly populated states like California have a lot of representatives and therefore a lot of power. But states with smaller populations like Montana have few representatives, or in Montana's case, only one. Regardless, if the census finds out that buttloads of Americans are moving to the southern states, then that means that they're going to get more representatives in the House, while places that they left will lose representatives. And that further means that the kind of policies being passed tend to reflect the interests of states with more representatives. So, you picking up what I'm putting down? Anyway, the second means by which governments use geographic data to make decisions is through the use of satellite imagery. For example, federal and state governments and various agencies use satellite images to track wildfires and make decisions about when certain populations need to evacuate and develop strategies for fighting those fires. And finally, we need to talk about the third major entity that makes use of geographic data for decision making, namely businesses and organizations. For example, you remember the COVID-19 pandemic that messed all our societal crap up? Yeah, well, businesses and schools use geographic data to figure out when it was safe to reopen. Maps track the infection rate at various scales, and based on that data, school administrators either kept the school closed or decided to reopen. Or to get back to Chick-fil-A. Because it's always the right time to get back to Chick-fil-A. Why are there 5 identical chicken restaurants within a short drive of my house? Because the fried chicken overlords running these restaurants studied my area and saw that a bunch of people were moving here and took a bet that opening 5 stores was a good idea. And for my money, that was a good bet. So all in all, here's what you need to remember. The power of geographical data comes from its ability to drive decision making, and that's it. All right, click here.
Data drives decision making. Okay. All right, I'm going to end this video, and all right, thank you very much.